that formula here, but I'm actually seeing it play out here. I can
Yes.
touch that. When I was working in the physics lab, we were talking about things that were just beyond me. Like in a classroom, they were like, no, the light wave comes in and it's absorbed, and this is how we measure it. And this is the practical theory behind it. But when I got into the lab and I like just started tweaking things and taking measurements, I was like, holy shit, this is it. It's doing the thing. And I can't see it, but I see the output of it. And my brain is starting to make the connection. So I've always been someone who just, again, I break all those lenses, but it wasn't until I broke those lenses that I realized I could work with my hands
And
and I can do the things.
your job recognized that and said, we're not throwing you back to the curb. And sometimes you assume as a person of color, and they're just, no, no, if you have the potential, they will find a place for you that aligns. So I love
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to pull out though is the work you do at the school
Oh,
because
sure.
it's so beautiful for me. So tell us a little bit about what you do at the school because maybe nobody realizes they're professors like you, and I didn't
Mhm.
realize the approach you had may have come from the man you look up to. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm now teaching at a teacher's college at Columbia University. I'm teaching game design that we had talked about, and games are really my passion, right? This is the stuff I love.
Mhm.
And as you and I had connected, like one of the things through games, especially if we talk about video games, is that video games cover almost every creative discipline, especially if we start locking in like coding as a creative discipline, and it can be.
Mhm.
It's a definite support to all things that are creative in a digital world. So I have been lucky enough to have an opportunity to work at this university and to provide more opportunities for people that look like you and I. We opened up a program this year for working with a young woman named Charlene Lowe, who's the graduate assistant here at the lab. And behind me, there's a bunch of board games. There's games everywhere. You could, if I put my camera around, you'd see a bunch of other video games, and all this stuff is in this room. Lots of monitors everywhere. But in any case, we were able to start a program this year for 5 youth. I say youth in that they were two high school students, two rising junior and senior, a junior and a senior rising high school, and then three other first and second year um, college students. One from Princeton, one from Rice, one from New York Technical School, um, and the other two were from high school, one in New Jersey and one in here. So, like, there were people of color in this space where there aren't always, right? And what we were able to do is, or what I was able to do, is get them exposed to my process. How do I make games? What are the things that are important for me about games? And I think even more important, I had a great conversation with this young man, African American male, is at New York Tech, and we started one of the games that I was working on is a game where he's in the architecture program, and what he wanted to do is do more modeling, doing
Mhm.
more, because his desire is to create cities. He's like, I want to create cities that people can see and I can show the value and the benefit. I'm taking architecture because that gives me the 3D tools and I can make any city I want. So something he hadn't had is like real practice in building worlds. And one thing the games allow you to do is build a world. And so we were sitting here having a conversation, and this thing was so one of the games we were working on is we were doing the Nashville sit-ins. So the sit-ins, one of the key sit-in moments where like John Lewis was and Diane Nash was at this Woolworths building in Nashville. So we start looking at what is the building made out of? What does it look like? We're analyzing the world because games are really the recreation of world systems that are in this world. And we are looking at the building and we're looking at the architecture and we're looking at the materials that it's made of because we're going to recreate this. So we start doing some history on like, well, why is this building built in this? Like, it's got this candy store in the bottom floor and you're eating around it. Like, what were the decisions people were making in the 50s that like this is a thing? Because this doesn't exist today. Like, we don't build stores and design them this way. Anyway, we're going through this whole thing. And what we realized is like Woolworths, as it started to go away, because he was asking me, are there any more Woolworths around? I'm like, no, we have the Woolworths building here in New York City. But we didn't, like, it's gone, it's defunct, it's not around anymore. And what we learned that was so interesting, and we had a moment that we shared as part of this knowledge sharing thing, is that Woolworths actually in the 70s, I think, purchased or acquired a shoe company. And that shoe company, once they changed the name, had gone on to become Foot Locker. So Woolworths itself doesn't exist any longer. The brand that has extended beyond them was Foot Locker. And we were like, we were just amazed that like this whole thing happened in these Woolworths buildings. But if you sort of juxtapose where we're at today, where Woolworths is no longer existing, but the extension of it are these Foot Lockers and the number of people of color that are in these spaces, that are purchasing, that are buying, that are running, that are working in, and just thinking about like that dichotomy, that juxtaposition of like where we couldn't get into the space and now we are fully, all of our brands and our products and the people, and like it is just fully ingrained into that existence of that store. I think doesn't exist without professional athletes, and most of those professional athletes being professional athletes of color, and the people that buy, like it's just our minds were blown, and I could see so many things opening up in him as we were just thinking originally about video games and how do we make them. When we think about games as systems and systems of the real world, we start to get a better understanding, and I think that's the value of this tech program. That it's not just you're going to learn to code, you're going to learn to design, I'm going to show you how to design, but the world that opens up to you when you have these tools in front of you, you have people who are exploring the space with you, it becomes this really, really big moment where you can learn more than just how to do those things. So we really love this program. I'm starting it up another year. We're going to get more applications, hopefully, and get more people. We'll try to expand it, and we'll try to bring more money into it. That's the goal, because the more money I can bring into the system, the more people I can bring in to help and get exposure.
So is your program undergrad, graduate level, certificate?
Both. No certificate, at least not yet. We're thinking about that. One of the challenges is if it is a paid program. So what it requires is my time, right? I gave my time for free. I can do that a little bit, but there's also another person who's involved who is giving up her summers, and there's these other people that I want to bring in, and they don't do this stuff for free. We can't continue to work for free, right? Can't do that. But I'm not, again, this isn't like an opportunity to like walk away with millions. Like that's not what this is about. It's really about the opportunities. So we try to think about like, how do we keep it low pay? But in that same statement, I want to make sure that the output for the students is of the same value. So when we're doing things for free, like people are coming in and they're not getting paid, it's an internship opportunity. I'm not getting paid. Like the output doesn't have to be as tangible. Like we can work, and believe me, what they produced this year was a game, and they built it with assets that I had purchased, and they built it with the things that I had been thinking about, and the designs I've been thinking about, which has been great. Right, because now they have something they can point to and say, no, I was in this program, we made that game. Dennis helped us make this game. Yeah, there's a prototype. And they didn't have a prototype a few weeks ago before they came in here. He didn't have world modeled assets before he came into this. So, as you ask that, I'm just trying to be sensitive about costs and the population we're looking for. They don't have money for these. So I'm for these sort of things all the time. And I'm trying to just figure out what makes sense for next year. Right now, the goal is to have some funding. So we're looking for grants, we're looking for partnerships. We're looking for other opportunities that might make it like some people can pay, right? People who can afford it. And then other people, we can create some sort of scholarship or something based off of that funding. But I don't know if we can go another year where everybody's working for free. So it's not a certificate. We'd like to have a certificate come out of it. What I'm doing now is guaranteeing like portfolio work. So if you ever want to get into games, you ever want to stay in a STEM, we can give you something that you can point at and talk about what you did in it, so that when you're in front of an employer, they can't question you because you're talking with confidence. Like, I built this is how I did it, this is what we did, and building that confidence so they can have that conversation. But ideally, a certificate from TC would be awesome. We'll see if we can work that out.
So I'm going to segue into something that I think you indirectly pointed to, imposter syndrome. What I've found is that if I have proof of concept or proof that I've done this, it's hard for anybody to say you don't belong here because chances are I'm more skilled. So have you experienced imposter syndrome, and how have you navigated that?
I feel like I have that every day. And I don't know if I should be saying that. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard for me because games are not something that people, there's not a, if I was making rap music, there wouldn't be a question, right? If I was playing pro ball, there wouldn't be a question. But the spaces that I'm in where we're talking about video games and successful ones, it's not the same. I just delivered a final product. So the games I work, I should be really clear. I don't make games for entertainment any longer. I make serious and educational games.
Nice.
So even from that point of view, there's not a lot of people that look like me that do the research and study these things. So I just delivered like Wednesday, final product for the Rand Corporation. I've been making a game for them for the last year. And even as I put that out there and deliver it to them for their QA and their review, I'm questioning every moment, like, what right do I have to say that this is what it is? And am I really doing, like, just so many questions in my vulnerability, right? I'm going to be really vulnerable here. Like, I don't know if who am I to say this? And am I really the person that should be doing this? Aren't there people who've studied this longer? At the end of the day, like, I just settle, I try to breathe. I'm like, I'm the one who did it. No one's built this game before. No one's asked for anything like this before. I did it. I put it on my back and I delivered it. Video games are the same way. Like, these people bring me in and they're like, we'd love to have this thing from you. And like, I go in with all sorts of, because I got confidence and I can talk, right? I can sell you, but when I'm sitting there alone and thinking about like the things that aren't right, I try to build confidence in myself. I try to make sure that I have people around me who not just support me, but can contribute to the process. Like if I'm starting to feel insecure, or that I shouldn't be here, I have other people who I can rely on to have a conversation and a dialogue, and they help to unlock me and get me refocused. I try to surround myself with people that are really positive and have a perspective on life and have a perspective on the things that we're trying to create. It's a creative process, and I think it's more of that I rely on. That I'm not the Martin Luther King of games. I'm just trying to make one game. I'm not trying to move all these people at once. That's hard. And then there's a lot of this self-doubt that comes in. I'm trying to make one, and I get a few people around me who are trying to make one, and we try to make something and push it together. Like, I don't want to work alone. So that tends to be where I find my security.
So I love what you're saying, and it's a take on the imposter syndrome I haven't heard before. Do you have immigrants, Black immigrants in your program?
So in the programs that I teach, no. Here at the university, no.
There's a reason why I asked you.
Oh, sure.
And this is, before we started the call, I was telling you I want to pursue a PhD. And I think this is part of the difference in what it means to have been raised outside of the US versus being here. And I'm going to speak to this as sensitively as I can.
Sure.
Being in a country where, and so you might need to go to, I don't know if you have visited countries that are predominantly Black, and not stay necessarily in the resorts, get out with people. Full of confidence. Listen, we think we should be the people building this space.
It's awesome.
And actually, I'm offended when I'm questioned. I was like, how dare you? And I often have to, and I said this to my daughter recently, I said, sometimes I forget they see me as Black. And she's like, what else would they see you as? Because I wasn't raised with the mindset. Like, why not I? I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I'll tell you this side story. I might cut it out, I don't know. But there was a very famous singer who came to Tobago to sing, and she landed in the middle of the night because she wanted to reduce the number of fans that showed up. And when she landed, there was not a single person at the airport. And she was shocked, and she's like, where are the people? And he's like, where should they be? And she, and they said, like, in Trinidad and Tobago, there is nobody who is important enough for anybody to come to the airport. Because to us, exceptionalism is normal.
Yeah, right. True.
They said the only person we might line the streets for is Barack or Michelle Obama. If you
I hear that.
Perform and go back on the plane. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
that it is, and it's that confidence. You know, if you've ever met someone who's African, you know, one of the things that used to be a joke is that an African would invite themselves to your house because he doesn't see it as misplaced. He's like, I am the person he wants.
yes.
Well, and that's the confidence. I mean, I've had imposter, but it's small pockets of
Yeah, I know what you mean.
experienced, and sometimes but if I've experienced it now, I deserve an Olympic medal.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It is hard, especially growing up with that, with the type of racism that we have in this country. Like, it's hard. I carry a burden, and it beats the hell out of me some of the times. But I try, you try to stay strong in front of your kids so they don't grow up with the same one. And my kids are growing up in a different world, right? It's still there, but it's not the same way. I think allyship is a real thing now, kind of, partially, most of the time, some of the times. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And I have traveled abroad. I have not been in a predominantly African country.
Oh, please sign yourself up, honey. You're gonna get a dose of scripture. You're gonna need it.
I would love that.
Yeah. So try it out, or get some fresh off the boat immigrants, because when you live here, you start to I started to feel the burden of it, and then I realized doors were still opening for me, and I would be told you're not like the rest. And so when I got in, I would learn what does that, I didn't
what does that mean?
Yeah. And it took me a while to understand I said, they're pretty, like I didn't understand. And it took me a while to unpack that. And that's why the work I'm doing and the podcasts like this so matters, because the narrative needs to change. And you feeling as able-bodied as the next guy.
That's right.
You have a portfolio that says, I can do this.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no reason why your knees should buckle for any person or anything.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. And just trying to build that confidence, right? I am fine carrying the burden for others to not have to carry it.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got strength. I've got what do they call that? I've got resilience. I've got capacity.
I'll tell you this funny thing, and then we are going to close with the last question, which is what is STEM? When I shared with someone I wanted to do a PhD, they're like, doing a PhD is difficult. And I literally immediately heard my mom, when I said that something was hard as a child, she'll say, being a slave is hard. Do you have it as hard as that?
Yeah, right.
Unless that's what you're signing up for today. Like, I don't want to hear how hard this is.
Yeah,
Get in there. And so you saying that you're carrying the burden so somebody else doesn't have to. We don't know what difficult is, and it's okay to shelter that so somebody else can grow up innocent to the burden of what it means or meant in the time you were raised.
If I can, I love the part that you said around shoot, it just escaped my mind, and you said it so clearly too. All right, it'll come back to me. But it was anyway. It was clear. And disappeared.
So what does STEM mean to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I was to give you one word, I think it means, well, maybe more than one word. I think it means financial security.
Yeah.
I think it means independence, wealth potential.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so even in a downturn, I made it through many layoffs, right? I've made it through the downturn in the economy in 2008, 2009. I was able to find work. There were people who were unable to find work.
Right.
I've been able to move. I choose not to move in the same way I used to when I was younger in my 20s and 30s. Like, I don't need to be executive director or executive vice president. That doesn't drive me right now. But what does drive me is the ability to supply for my family, provide them options, and STEM has been able to do that.
Wow. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Do you have any closing words for the audience?
Oh boy. Keep going. You know, I want more for you. Like, keep doing this, keep bringing people in, keep listening to them, keep listening, keep finding those things that keep you motivated and drive you. Those are the things that matter. And make sure you keep surround yourself with people that love you, because that's their support is what matters.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, bye everybody until our next video.
Bye-bye.